There we go. Share. And so first one is the few emails that have come through. A lot on for next week when we look at Lehman Street and a few other bits and pieces. Let me just check. This is from Mona. Mona's not on there yet.
No, Mona won't be able to make it today. She's gone to the soccer.
Oh, that's right. I did get a email. Thanks, Peter. So what was?
She's obviously got her priorities right.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So the question is, what do you do about this thing called sudden limb drop, sudden branch failure, summer branch drop? You can call it 100 things. Pattern of failure. Where do you start looking at these trees? And once you start seeing bits break off, what's the general approach? Here's one you can see where they've put a number of cobras in, and that's a fairly good thing to do. This is a Tasmanian blue gum, and my eyesight's not the best, but if I was guessing, that looks like there's a young Felinus fruiting body there. So, what do you do about trees that drop parts? And there's a really obvious answer, and the obvious answer I think is done well and addressed well with the ISA's tree risk assessment text, where it says, when you see these things happening, you need to determine the cause of the failure. Once you've determined the cause of the failure, you need to say, are there other such affected parts in the tree? And if so, deal with those parts. If not, then it's a tree that's like any other tree. What do you do when it's had 3 or 4 failures? Again, if you can't determine why, then is it just a clustering of events? And Mona does send us a second one, which is equally as interesting. The first one it dropped, it's dropped a big limb you can see here. And I can see from here, can you guys see a color change there? There's a ring shake in the middle. Definite ring shake. Let me see, can I go? I can open that up and make that larger, so I will. Yes, can you see the ring shake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something that's happening. And I can see some staining here. I don't know whether you guys can as well.
Yeah.
So I suspect, although that looks like that might be a part of that stem up there, but here, even here, this discoloration, I suspect that this has been a gradual failure. That is, something has broken and then something else is broken afterwards. But there's nothing there that, as I look at it from the outside, that would have given me a clue that there was something wrong on the inside. And so my view of this is a tree part that is covered by what we call background risk. That is, doesn't matter what you do with trees, there's always going to be some risk. And so background risk from trees is less than 1 in 5 million. Because the mortality rate is 1 in 5 million. A number of those will be from background risk. That is, things that have failed that nobody could determine or prevent. Occasionally, there'll be something that, had somebody looked at it, you might have been able to do something. So things that are in that background risk category, you just treat as everyday activities. Something that's already that small is something you don't need to worry about. Okay.
That the log in the top right-hand corner has got the ring set up there with the difference in colours as well.
Yeah. So it looks like it's been a partial failure that's occurred beforehand, and then a final failure. The problem with these partial failures is often we're not going to see them, and if we can, we don't have that opportunity to necessarily do much about it. So, and it may be disproportionate, I think, in many cases, to be doing something about it. That's not saying you can't do anything.
But excuse me, Can we go back to that previous tree, which was
This Maligna, sorry, Grandis, sorry, Globulus.
yeah, the globulus. I think for a start, that tree seems to have unusual structure for the species, but also you have to realise that that species has a particularly short lifespan.
Well, it
And
depends on where we are with that, of course, doesn't it?
well, they grow very quickly. It's easy come, easy go.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. They are uh, quick and they're prone to pholinus. And I agree that that is not an ideal structure. But here's the interesting thing that goes with that. So if it falls apart or if it fails, realistically, what's the risk like? And I just finished doing a risk assessment on a tree, and I can show you the tree where one stem had failed and two stem remained. And we looked at aerial images, and from the aerial images, we can tell that the tree over the last 20 years has gradually, the three stems have been gradually moving out. One's failed now, the two remaining ones still further out. And I did the risk assessment on it, and the risk still comes out less than 1 in 5 million. Sorry, less than 1 in a million, even though I think failure is somewhere between 1 in 10 and 1 in 100. So it's got a high likelihood of failure, but people aren't outdoors during inclement weather. So these things, you know, it might do some property damage, and property damage is likely to be the largest thing that's going to do. But really, does it matter? You know, and the one thing that I have to say to Mona's credit is it's got a crap load of cobra in it. You know, you can see there's I hope you can see there's a one there, one there, one there. So there's a three-way here, plus another one here. So yeah, I mean, you know, I guess the secondary issue here is management, and the management issue is the presence of this tree stopping another tree from being planted and getting to a reasonable size? And the answer is probably not. Well, then, you know, let's get another tree planted and start looking at it from a management perspective, not necessarily a risk perspective. And here is one of the bits that have failed, and you can see here, I can zoom in a bit on that and move it a fraction. It's not the clearest image, but this is a white pocket rot. So it's behaving well. It's not misbehaving. It's not horrendous. It will be pathogenic. That is, it will be killing some live tissue, but it's not going rampant. And this doesn't cause a lot of loss of strength. This is like putting polystyrene in a pipe. It makes or a conduit, it makes the conduit stronger, not weaker. So this hasn't lost all of its strength when we get a white pocket rot. It becomes all of its strength when it just turns to white. Now, white pocket rot, I know I've showed you before, but let me refresh. Hopefully I can pull up an image of it. Yeah, okay, I've got two images of it there. So you can see here, the fungus doesn't eat everything. It leaves these little pockets of hard tissue, and the fungus goes between that. Hard tissue is like violet crumble, you know, gives some strength to the chocolate on the outside. If you took the violet crumble away, the chocolate would just collapse. So white pocket rots are not as weak as fully loss of tissue or a full cavity. So we've got some strength there. So overall, as I look at the shots, you know, okay, parts failed. That's an unfortunate part of having trees. If you don't want branches falling, you really have to start thinking, do I get rid of trees altogether? You know, is there something I've got to do? So, yeah, we know what it is. It's pholinus, definitely. Pholinus badius, if the current classification is correct. And that's typical of, and again, you can see the white pocket rot in here. So this is just typical of it. And I agree, it's as a result, they tend to succumb to decay, but they don't seem to fail as often as they get decay. The classic place is Canberra. Anyone on the line from Canberra? No? Canberra planted globulus all over the place, and some bicostata, globulus bicostata, and they're just prone to phalinus damage, and you don't see a lot of them failing, even though there's heaps of them. And that goes back to that issue again that we talked about. If things start to get weak, what does the tree do?
Grow some more wood to compensate.
Produces adaptive growth. That adaptive growth, those cells get told to change the way that S1 to S3, the secondary walls, are formed. Those secondary walls become stronger, give more support. You know, not necessarily the end of the world. Why did bits fail? Bits fail because the force applied was greater than they could resist. And our question is, could we have reasonably foreseen that and known that was going to happen with that branch? And after the event, I'm really good. Before the event, I'm really bad. So if I'm bad before the event, then it means I don't need to worry about it. So if I look up and I see something that's of concern, that's great. But most of the time, I look at it and I think, oh, I wouldn't have picked that. Wouldn't have got that. The times when I am good at it are equally as faulty, and that's when I look at particular codominant stems, included junctions with included bark. Who's good at spotting them? Anyone? So one hand, only one person good at spotting them. I can spot them all the time when they're on the ground because they've got a unique little V. And again, if I go back over,
I don't know if anybody else is having this issue, but you're muted, Mark.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Mark? We can't hear you.
can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, come now.
Okay. Just had to reset it. So I said this shape here might remind you of the handle of a spade or a shovel where it meets the blade. Can you see that? There's a handle coming down, and this is your blade shape here. So the tree is actually making a structure that's relatively strong. It's not necessarily weak. When these fail, we're really good at picking it because they leave that telltale sign. That looks something like this, where we get the nice V of the tissue on the inside. Is everyone familiar with that? Everyone's seen it? You see that on the ground, you say, that was a codominant stem that's failed. I know why it's failed. And that creates issues because we get this view of what codominant stems are like and what we should be expecting. The reality is often somewhat different. So if I can pull you up a few shots that might help. This is a codominant stem here. Two stems. You can see here the bark's been pinched in here. Let's put new tissue on the outside. And that's the other side of it. And almost nothing is affected. That's higher up. So over time, this tree has actually widened and dealt with that included tissue. So that's one of the things we've got to be aware of. Trees can deal with it. And I'm sure I've showed you the letterbox. Have I showed you the letterbox that has the tree growing over the top of it? No? Okay, I'll find that for you and show you. But oftentimes these really tight forks don't fail. So here's one that was hit by a storm. You can see if we zoom in, there's a fair amount of wound wood on that. Okay, that's been like that for 10, 15 years prior to that photograph being taken. And Peter, this is the one from up near Casino, and that's been through a number of big storms, and it just says, yeah, okay. I mean, that's come out a fair way. That was there. And okay, so we know that that's possibly weaker at that spot, and that's good. That gives us some information. If I can, I'll find you a codominant stem that's, I think, could we agree
just because it's weaker doesn't mean that it's going to fail, though.
Yeah, could we agree that this is one that's probably going to fail? Who would say that's most likely going to fail? Who would say that if we had 10 of those, that expect one to fail in the year? Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with not keeping that. I did say retain it. It was in a low use area in a school, so it didn't have to go. On the other hand, the school was actually closed down in part because there's a different school. This callistemon had included bark. Well, there's no way it can fail. The only way it can fail is if this stem can magically pass through this stem. And that just, I know you can do it with the linking rings. I get the magic trick, but this is not a magic trick. It can't be done. So this is one where even though the tissue is included, you just ignore it. And so, and I can show you lots and lots and lots. This is one that I think is good to be aware of. This is Eucalyptus microcories. And if you looked at that, that would look like a branch. But in fact, the branch was once a codominant stem and it is included on the top side. And these do socket out. So if you see a microcories lose a branch, that's one of the things. Can I see that from the bottom side? So this is looking up from the bottom. The answer is no, I could never tell that. So I know they do it. It's either remove every Eucalyptus microcories or accept that occasionally microcories will drop really big branches. I'd rather have a lemon-scented gum over my property than a Eucalyptus microcories. Isn't that interesting? What's comparison? So I'm just trying to find the right shot for you to ask the question. I know it's here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Huh. Okay. This is a eucalypt and it's got a reasonably nasty amount of included tissue. And this one here, this stem on this side, the right-hand side, is a stem that's going to get knocked out. You know, it's obviously the less successful of the two. So that's okay. I see that. And then I move backwards and I look up and instead the top's broken off, not down here. Where was the weakest spot? Well, based on the load that was applied to it, here. And so the question we need to ask anytime we're looking at these things is not a question of is there included tissue there, but is there adequate strength there? And in most cases, when we look at codominant stems failing, they fail in inclement weather when other normal tree parts fail, which means they're no weaker than other normal tree parts. And they're no worse than average other normal tree parts. You know, if you're doing quantitative assessments, you might increase the likelihood of failure of something like this by a factor of 1 order of magnitude or a power of 10. That's about it. About 10 times more likely to fail than a normal tree. If a normal tree poses a risk of harm of 1 in 10 million, then this tree might pose a risk of harm, in this case, of 1 in a million. A nothingness. Make sense?
Yeah.
So yes, we get really anxious about, you know, things potentially failing. This is another one I was sharing with a group from Queensland recently. This is outside a car dealership, used car dealership, new car dealership. Would you agree that that's a fairly bad included junction on Crimbia maculata?
Yep.
Looks pretty bad.
Yeah, here's the problem. I did a risk assessment on that and it still came up as acceptable risk. And I'll show you where it is. I'll show it in the street. And the dilemma becomes, do I say it's a risk or do I say it's not a risk? And one of the things I've become really aware of is I need to be consistent. So the answer is the risk is still in the tolerable and as low as reasonably practicable level. There's my tree there. Yeah, if it fails, it's going to fail onto the driveway, fail onto the cars. The risk is not high enough to get it removed for a risk basis. So I simply referred that to the council. I said, this is a tree. I can't sign off and say, get rid of it. It's a tree that you need to have the council have a look at it. And I can't imagine the council saying no. I think that goes back to that management issue again. Derek, you do that sort of work. Would you have any problems with that tree going?
Yeah, I would have probably recommended a weight reduction prune on the smaller of those two stems.
And maybe keeping it?
Yeah, and keep it.
Yeah, it's possible.
If there was enough reaction wood going on there, then
There is. Yeah,
I would have pruned first and then put it under a observation list.
That's it in 2007. And for those of you who haven't played it, Google Street View is just really fun to have a look at these things. It still hasn't failed. That's our tree there. That's it setting itself up. 2019. Doesn't look like it's failed in 2019 at the beginning. Oh, yeah, maybe it's a crack starting there. So it's survived for 4 years after the crack started.
Yeah, you can see the problem is it's got very much apical codominance going on there.
Yeah,
So
that's right. It would have
putting
been nice to have
foliage on
done,
both sides.
would have been nice to have done some formative printing by just removing that when it was younger. And we
Yeah,
go back to
that'd be the easiest.
2016. You know, at this stage here, this is where good arboriculture is done. Go in, cut the smaller of the two stems, and don't have to take it off in one go. Bring it back down to here. So slow it down, let this area start to fill back in. Maybe back down to a secondary point again on the second time, third time cut off. There's a great way to prune trees. It's the ideal way, subordination pruning. You know, Shigo used to say that, you know, if you haven't seen a dentist in 30 years, you don't go to the dentist and say, fix everything in one go. You know, they usually do it in a number of visits, and most trees we see aren't taken care of on a regular basis. So, yeah, so whilst the risk might be in the tolerable and as low as reasonably practicable range, doesn't mean there aren't reasons to consider potentially getting rid of it. It's just that it's not my decision to make then. And that creates, you know, intelligent people having to make decisions about what they do and their assets. So if I can just duck back to images. So that answers Mona's question. That's the only question that came in, all to do with the same basic bits and pieces. You know, how do we handle this? Background risk is acceptable. Let me ask you another question. Does the average tree have dead branches?
Yes.
Yeah, most.
Medium-sized dead branches, you know, 5 centimetre dead branches, you know, that sort of size, average bigger tree, 500 mil diameter trunk, 50 centimetre trunk. It's going to have some 5 centimetre dead branches in it. How do we handle those?
Leave them.
In most cases, they just fit in that background risk as well. Because it's so common. If you ever want to do something that's really fascinating, drive the Hume Highway between Albury-Wodonga and Melbourne and count the number of large dead trees that could fall onto the road or large dead branches that overhang the road, and then look for the grave markers, the crosses at the side of the road. Look for the dents in the guardrails and the cabling at the side. And it's amazing for all of what's there, how little consequence there is from all of that stuff. I'm not saying that it can't happen. It's just saying, you know, it takes a fair few thousand branches to fall for someone to get some form of harm. not necessarily death. Usually, a shock and a fright and a broken windscreen is probably the more common if you're talking about roads. So yeah, it gives you a different perspective, hopefully. So other disease questions whilst we've got you guys? Any? No? Then you're going to suffer what I've been going through. So I went out to a site the other day and saw that codominant stem. This is an Angophora floribunda. It's got a fair length of tissue that's holding it together. That's me getting the wrong way. This is the other side. You can see the cracks generated all the way down to here. And this is what Matic calls a cupboard door failure. That is, it's going to open up with wind coming laterally along the side, probably more so than going. So it's holding on a lot more on one side and not as much on the other. And this is one that I was happy to say from a client's perspective, there's a major commercial building here. I'm not going to name them, but, multi-million-dollar facility. Having something like that crashing through the roof is probably not something that they want. It would probably cause a fair disturbance and you might not get your carbonated beverages as quickly. So I think we've got to, take care of people. So that was a tree I was happy to get rid of. And cupboard door failure simply because it opens up on one side, so an included junction that's opening up because it's rotating. And it happens frequently when a canopy is or more frequently when a canopy is asymmetric. So this is one that I passed by in just outside the Art Gallery in Sydney. And this is an Aconta phoenix. It's palm, Aconta phoenix alexandrae. It's tapering. But look at that. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Mark, 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 mark. There's spikes all the way up to the recent crown shaft. So someone's climbed this palm tree with spikes. Why would you do that? Makes it easier to climb, doesn't it?
Yeah. Heaps.
But that's probably a 4 meter high thing. I've got a step ladder that'll fit in the back of my car that'll go to that height. As a step ladder, 3.7 meters it'll let me stand at. So yeah, it was one of those things that I see as tacky. I know that people do it and I appreciate that. But that's permanent and that tree will always look like it's a junkie. And that's what I think of every time I see it is, the tree's got needle marks in it. It does affect them. They do compartmentalize. So, it's dealing relatively well with it. But that's been climbed once. The other thing that I have to say is not only do you use spikes, but it clearly couldn't climb because I can do still at my old age of 63, I can still do half-meter movements on a pair of spikes. That's just appalling that, you're getting a spike go up by 150 mils. I mean, the guy was clearly not competent. If you did it, any of you, I apologize for saying that, but just don't do it. That's a interesting process in terms of how people see things. Just come down to some more trees. I said to you earlier on about a tree that it was falling apart in 3 directions. And this is one of those stems that fell apart. Derek, you and I have had a chin wag about this tree. You can see the stem has failed. There are 3 stems and they're split to the ground. And you can see how little wood was left from the stem that's actually failed. There are 3 stems of a fairly similar proportion. So this one's reasonably good, but this one here, I suspect is the next one that's going to go. It looks like it's rotating that way. What do? The risk is small. It's minuscule. This tree, this gap here has widened at the top of the canopy by about 2 meters over the last 15 years. It's slowly going. Can it go at that sort of speed without failing? What do you reckon, guys?
I think my only concern is we're starting to get more intense storm events. So I'd be wanting to probably either put a cobra brace in it, or you're looking at a bit of thinning, because there seems to be a lot of weight up there.
Yeah, look, it's an
A lot of
interesting
sail
one.
effect.
Let me play the devil's advocate with you there, Derek. Can I force a tree owner to do that?
Yeah, I suppose it comes down to cost.
Yeah, the tree owner says, I don't want to do that. I'm holding up something as well.
Yeah, and it's well, and also given it's had one failure in the past, as you say, when you and I spoke about this, I could only go on your description of what you saw.
Yeah.
But I suppose I'll be also assessing the targets around the tree.
Target's so small, it's ridiculous. And that's why it comes out low.
Mm.
You know, you just, doesn't matter what you do, that's not going to fail just on a normal day. If it does, it'll be slow and noisy. There'll be lots of tearing and cracking. But I'll go back to the included junctions again. Let me just
And I think too, when you've got a junction that close to the ground, it's got greater support.
Yeah, I agree.
Being closer to the base.
Yeah, I think if it would have been higher up, it would have been something that would have probably already gone. And I think it will go. I don't know when, but I suspect probably in the next 10 or 15 years, the second stem will go, and then there'll be no option but to remove the third. And yes, in a perfect world, we'd brace it. In a perfect world, we could do some reduction pruning. But of course, we don't live in that perfect world. You might have noticed some of those inclusions, and you certainly saw it on that one up near Peter's end of the world, the Eucalyptus cribra, is that often as they fail, they flex, they curve, and that's really quite amazing. And I'll find you a couple that have done it. So this is one here. That's a Melaleuca. That stem and that stem were once joined above that spot. They're curving outwards, but not failed. You know, amazing from my side that they can get to that sort of level. Not that one. There's one, you know, again, you can see the curvature often happens for quite some time. And I'm wanting to find, let me see, I can do it at Ropes Crossing. There's a great one in Ropes Crossing that had been there for a considerable number of years, and unfortunately it either failed or someone ended up spotting it, and it ended up getting removed. Well, it doesn't see Ropes Crossing and Shane's Park too much the difference, so I might not be able to find it. But it had gone from a co-dominant stem to almost 45 degrees out, and it was just an amazing amount of curvature. And the tree was still standing there, it hadn't failed. Just try one more time under inclusion, see if I can find it. So yeah, we expect these things just to let go and fail, and they do. It's not saying that they don't. It's just that it doesn't happen as frequently as we might think. And you know, this is a good one for those of you who want to go find it. It's up at Palm Beach on the main beach road, and it's got a co-dominant stem that's been like that for over 90 years. You know, when's it going to fail? I'm sure it will, but probably not in my lifetime, probably not in its lifetime. It'll probably die as the first process. So hopefully that solves that one. Okay, so back to things. So yes, common thing to see. I guess my suggestion to you is understand the critical bit is be consistent with your risk assessments. If the risk is low, don't go changing it just because the tree should be removed. Argue the case for the removal of the tree. As soon as you start saying, oh, look, it's a stuffed tree, it really should go, it's dangerous, then every tree that's low risk like it should go. This is a tree I've been watching for a while. I detoured on my last trip to Queensland on my way back to go photograph this. This is a Araucaria, a Cunninghamiana hoop pine, and this is less than what we call sub unionodal growth. That is, instead of a new wall out every year, it's stopped, it's missed a year. And they do that occasionally. The belief is it's something to do with carbohydrates. So you can count the age of a tree, an Araucaria, by counting the number of whorls. That'll give you its age, plus or minus, maybe 5 to 10%. But every now and again, they'll put these long ones on where they don't put a whorl on. Everything will hold back, and then they put this massive new growth. And the reason I photographed this is when I first started photographing this, the top was over at almost 90 degrees because it couldn't support it. It was so long and lanky, hadn't got any thickening. So this has slowly thickened up in time and brought it back straight. And I raised that because I think it's interesting to see the same thing. Here, we've got the opposite. This was once a branch, and this branch has been pushed back up straight by compression wood. Has everyone seen the twisted forest or the tortured forest of Poland?
Yeah.
Yep. Images. And that's happened there. That was a branch that's been pushed up to apical dominance, that lovely little curve. So that's what's happened with that Araucaria. And you can see that curve. And so when you see that in conifers, that's the typical process of it straightening itself up. Now, is it possible the top had been broken by some way and there's a fracture in there? Yeah, I can't rule that out. But that's certainly compression wood at that last stage, pushing it back up. Happy with that?
Yep.
Peter, that's in Brisbane if you ever get up there on the north side. Boondall, I think is the name of the place. I apologise for it being the wrong way around. I'll twist it up the right way for you. Rotate left, rotate left. Rotate left. Basal lesion, someone's asked me about that before. When I see things like that, I'm more cautious. What am I thinking might be happening?
Malaria.
Yeah, a fungal issue of some description or a root injury. No evidence of this stage. Trees healthy. Malaria is what sort of a fungus? Who can remember? Peter? A pathogen. Andrew, thanks. It's a pathogen, so it kills live tissue. It's a weak saprophyte, so it's not so good at decaying stuff. It's better at killing stuff. So usually when you see malaria, you'll see symptoms of stress in the canopy of the tree. So for a Sydney blue gum in the western suburbs of Sydney, that's in the normal range of acceptability. So not the need to get anything done or be concerned about anything. Okay, leaning tree.
Mark, just on that last one, wouldn't it be, you could also though recommend, unless you're going to be doing a test, to at least increase the mulch around the base of the tree.
You could.
So then, because you're retarding a potential fungal growth. And then if the canopy sustains itself, then there's a good chance it's in balance.
That's right. Look,
if it has any question.
the other things that it could be is phytophthora. It could
Mm.
be just a simple injury of some description. But you're absolutely right. There's really good work that shows a strong correlation between beneficial fungi and suppression of bad fungi.
Yep.
So mulch is really good. Armillaria, and I know we've discussed it before, at least I'm pretty sure we have. Armillaria really is an opportunistic pathogen. It's got to have a tree that's recently died, got to have the spore go out at the right time. Really, it is difficult to start a new colony. And one of the things we recommend to stop it being spread is during the autumn months in particular, making sure that if you cut a tree down, you either grind the stump or cover the stump with some form of mulch or grindings, or leave the stump really long, like, the seed height, to reduce the likelihood of getting an infection. So how do we handle a leaning tree? I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Why is it leaning?
Trying to go to the light, it looks like.
Yeah, growing, most stages growing towards light. In the case of jacarandas, I suspect it's also growing away from dark. It doesn't like anything. It really does like to be away from anything that's going to affect it. So it'll grow away, for example, from the far red that grows through the canopy of the eucalypts on the property adjacent to me. It'll grow away to the north because it knows that the eucalypts there. It picks up the excess far red, and that is an avoidance process. And so, leaning tree, quite possibly normal. One of the things that's neat here is this is an ordinary building. It's got ordinary footings. That is, there'll be maybe 500 or 600 mils deep. And roots, in spite of our view that they're not that deep, will often go down that distance and a little bit more and go underneath. So it's not uncommon when you go to a demolition site to see roots underneath and even in under the building itself. And so the building is possibly giving it some support. And that's one of the things we need to think about if we're demolishing a building near a tree. But the fact that it's got a lean in itself is not an issue, at least not an issue from my side. I don't know whether I asked you this one last time, but has anyone got any idea what that is? That's a weirdo.
Brussels sprouts.
Close. Yeah, that's the root system of a Brussels sprout cabbage, Brassica europea. So that's that whole group of plants. You just don't think of the stems like that. That was who said that? Matt, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done, Matt. You've grown veggies, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. The person that sent me this one, thanks. At least the top of the tree's gone. But you can imagine people doing that to trees, can't you? And so what would happen if the rest of that tree was there? Let's imagine that's a tree that's growing partially on the neighbouring property, like you've seen here, and the neighbours come along and done that to the fence to get the fence through. Where do you think we stand on it? Any guesses?
Yeah, it's the same as having a big open cavity on one side of the tree. So I suppose you'd be looking at the amount of wood that's there to support the canopy and assessing the tree to see whether it can, because you could have a failure in that direction.
Yeah, look, it is a big, it's probably more than a third opening, so it's bigger than we would like. But the interesting thing is, if the tree owner, which is the anatomical centers on the adjacent property, if the neighbor had cut this and done this to a tree, in most states that would be something that would be actionable under the Crimes Act. The tree has been damaged without consideration. And there was a great one in the US Oh, well, Alex Shargo was still alive, so a fair while ago, 35 years or so ago, where that's exactly what happened. And a neighbour cut the tree, bang, smack along the boundary line, just half of it, and left the other half, and it ended up in a fairly nasty legal action. So yeah, not the thing to do to a tree. I did have that there somewhere up there. This is a hole in a eucalyptus that's quite small. When I say quite small, perhaps the size of the inner stem of a pen, you know, a biro, that little tube, or the spray tube of a WD-40 tube, that sort of size, quite small. Anyone got any ideas on what that is? No?
Not your polyphageous shuttle borer.
It could be. It's Kirkleonidae, though, almost certainly, or weevil. Fortunately, it's not Polyphageous shot-hole borer, but it's what we need to be aware of. So this is one that I reported and asked them to go and inspect, just to make sure that it wasn't. Polyphageous shot-hole borer is a weevil, so it's Kirkleonidae. It's in Western Australia. It's a polyphageous, meaning many eating. So it eats lots of different things. And it's causing problems with, not serious problems with, but problems with ficus, jacaranda, big problems with poplar, maples, things that don't have lots of extractives in their wood. So things that they have what the English Europeans call ripe wood, or wood without dark staining in the heartwood. And so we do need to be very vigilant and keep our eyes open for that. So, you know, about a 3 millimeter diameter hole is something that we need to keep thinking about and looking at. Why so many pictures of slides, guys? That's how I take my notes. And if you're using Google Photos, Google can actually search all the words in those photos for you. So it again makes it really a brilliant way of going out and finding that information a second time. So one of my favorite things, as you know now, Google Photos. That's that same tree. Those were shots by Catherine Russo, and when she said she'd seen it, I had some work to do just in the same street, and I thought, oh, I've got to get a photograph of it as well. It does look good, doesn't it? I'd like it in my backyard. Of course, somebody else would say, need to cut it down. So do a couple more, and then we will call it quits on a day. I'll try and find a couple more interesting diseases for you. This is one that gets discussed every now and again. There was a paper out recently, and it was real fun to question and challenge it. Does anyone know what this is? Or was, before I hit that?
That sounds like Araucaria columnaris.
Araucaria columnaris. Someone published a paper saying that it looks like there's some system by which it picks the northern hemisphere. That is, it points towards the north or more northern side. It doesn't ever point towards the south. What do you think? Do you think that's a likely scenario? What you got to do
I've
is
always thought it came from the same original genetic batch, and that they need to check its provenance. And I actually spoke to the guy that wrote that paper, and when I suggested that to him, he said he spent a lot of time traveling around looking at these trees, but then I did find one that pointed south. So
another that pointed south, which automatically finishes the argument, doesn't it? And so if I go to Isle of Pines, Ile de Pins is the source of or the greatest concentration of them, and I look for trees We get trees that are pointing in images in alternative directions. And so if it were the case, they'd not be pointing 90 degrees to each other. That is, you get, a tree with a strong lean that way. Well, it's got to get you guys out there. You get a strong lean that way, and you'll get another one that goes a strong lean the other way. And just even going on Google Images was sufficient for me to say, I don't know that that's particularly reliable in terms of its observations.
Mm.
So,
you took that picture. Yeah.
Two directions. Sorry? Yeah, I could be careful with it, but it is New Caledonia, so people are respectable in beachwear, so it's not so bad. But yes, they lean. Definitely there is an increased likelihood of it facing towards the north for whatever reason, but by no means is it conclusive. There's certainly enough errors, and I think what happens is we probably bias the way we collect data. That is, we go around, we look, and for whatever reason, we look for things to support our beliefs. Like, I'm a nice guy, okay? I look for things to support that concept. I don't look for the things that don't support it. Peter, on the other hand, sat in my class looking for the reasons why I wasn't a nice guy. And both are valid observations. So it just doesn't, it's not just a one-sided part of the deal. So always problematic. That's just a sick perversion that people have. Yeah, they're bottle tops.
It looks like a bottle top tree.
Yeah, it is a bottle top tree. This is Phoenix canariensis bottle topius. Is that going to harm the tree?
No.
No, those are PDL bases. But it's not something that I'd want him to go doing, much deeper than that. If they can drive it in and get it to stay there, it's probably not going to affect it. So there's still a little bit between there and the periderm, remembering that the periderm is made up of the PDL bases. So it's where the vascular bundles go through and become a part of the main stem. So we really don't want to be doing those sort of things if we can help it. Quick question. These are not drilled. These are naturally occurring. What do you think we might be looking at? Shape of the holes basically round.
What about a wood moth larvae?
Wood moth would be one. So, yep, wood moths make nice round holes. Another group that make nice round holes.
Just thinking of bark weevil, because that looks like a conifer trunk.
Yeah, I think that's cypress bark weevil. Yep.
And it's pupating.
Pupating tunnel. You've got it. Thank you. Excellent. Those of you who haven't seen a tree spade digging a hole, there's the plug out of a 2-meter tree spade or 2100 tree spade, and that's the hole.
Really good soil profile there too. Stands out.
Yeah, look, and let's talk about that very quickly. The soils are an important part of what we're working with. Let's talk about those. First of all, the top layer. What do you notice?
Well, that'd be A horizon, high organic content.
A horizon's probably gone, Derek. There may be some there, but most of Sydney lost its A horizon. Well, it's O horizon, and its A horizon's often truncated. It's lost a fair bit. We had rabbits in the 1950s, and we had droughts, and it rained, and topsoil washed away all over the place. But yes, there's certainly a small amount of A horizon there. And this dark brown coloring, does anyone know what that is? We can make that. We can artificially create it. Does anyone want to guess the soil type?
Oh, it's clay soil.
Clay. Yeah, it's clay. And this blacky colored stuff or dark brown is staining as a result of an organic clay. You get organic clays by taking organic material, letting it break down. And when they're very small particles, things move it around in the soil, like worms and cultivation, those things. So our dark brown and dark gray is our organic clays. And we really want to create organic clays. This sort of soil here holds more water than this soil here.
Mm.
Okay, organic clays are even more water holding. Why is this red and why is this grey?
The grey is the low oxygen content. So that's
Reduced,
an anaerobic
no, it's
state of the soil.
not anaerobic, but it's lower oxygen. Yeah,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
Whereas the orange is the iron content that is reacting with the oxygen.
They've both got iron, that's right, but this has got more oxygen, so we're getting more rust.
Mm.
Nice and simple. So we're getting more iron oxide, which is what gives us our rust. And so roots grow down into this, and I'm pretty sure they do because there's some roots down there, another root there. So trees don't use oxygen at a huge and fast rate. They do get some depth, and that's from there to there is 1.5 meters. So 1.3 meters, we've still got some root activity going on. And I think that's important to keep in mind, that it's not a absolute black and white. Interesting, as we got to the back section of the site. Oh no, that's from where the palm came out. That's okay. That's you can see again, right down the bottom here, we've got roots, we've got roots, we've got roots.
Mm.
And that's in that grey zone. So in case of Phoenix, that's not fair, because a Phoenix canariensis can transport oxygen to its roots. When it's established, you can flood it. It can stay in a dam and be flooded for 2 or 3 months of the year and still survive it.
Mm.
So very different response than a lot of things. This is again a sample that someone sent me some shots of. This is Phil Witten. He came past, and I think this is just a brilliant example of trees' ability to deal with things. This tree had been pushed over, broken. This is a fracture. It's been pushed down to the ground. You can see that it's occluded. That was once back down here, and this stem was once straight. That was once going back upwards, and this is down. If you haven't seen it, watch a good Japanese bonsai. Start with a straight pine and cut wedges out of the trunk and fold the trunk down and fold the trunk down wedge after wedge after wedge as they curve the trunk, and then let them graft together. You know, it's really not amazing if we think of it in those terms. But it's pretty amazing when you see a tree like that that's sitting there. Something knocked it over originally, but it says, I'm going to survive. This is a real life situation. Branch fell in a school. I want the broken end, always take the broken end, and I always suggest that you keep the broken end. But there's this internal damage. And this in part has led to the failure. Can I tell that damage is there beforehand? I can get some little hints. I see the swelling nodules here.
Yeah, I was going to say there'd be, you got a little bit of reaction wood there, but
yeah, but then
it's not obvious.
Yeah, and you know, I've got reaction wood. Do I go up and check every spot of it? No. You know, if I did a ultrasound here, I might not find that I've got as little a tissue as I've got here, and it might not give me indication it's going to break. So unless you're going to go up and x-ray the entire thing and then apply an equation to it, we just have to accept that branches failing like this is a part of the background level of risk. And so when you have something like this happen and a client calls you up, how do you deal with it? How do you address it? How do you communicate it? Any hints?
Normally I'd be saying to them that they can have, borer damage like that. I mean, that could also be carpenter ants, but there's, you can also get
borer
micro
ants.
cracks. Yeah. You can also get micro cracks from the branch moving around, and there's no way of picking it, but the tree will usually always react to it because it's going on all the time.
Yeah, my response is, look, tree fell, part fell, no one got hurt. That's what we expect.
Mm.
That's the normal part. Trees are woody shedding organisms. We should not be surprised that they shed. What we should be surprised is if they hurt somebody. That should be a real surprise. Because these things, I mean, let me ask all of you, who reckons that there would have been at least 1,000 branches fall in suburbia in the last year?
Oh, easily.
Who reckons there'd be
Far more than that.
fall?
Mm.
Probably.
Mm.
So, how many people get killed by a falling branch? Very few. How many people get hit by a falling branch? Well, the answer is somewhere between 0.4 and 6 more. So we split those differences. That's about 2.4, 3 times more people. No, it's almost nobody. If we talked about hit by a branch and hurt, gone to hospital, spent a night in hospital, so serious injury, and killed by branches, and compared that with, I'm just trying to think of something that would be everyday-ish.
Compare it with electric scooters on the footpaths.
Oh, well, that's just a suicide. And that's, I can't compare it with driving because there's so many. But if I compared it with dogs, deaths by dogs, horses, and cows and donkeys, the answer is the animals win hands down still. So, it's just small numbers. And I don't know how we got to the perspective that there was so many and it was a big issue. It really is small numbers. It's something we need to be concerned about, but it's not something we need to be panicky about. And that's just the reality of what we deal with. White jacaranda there, guys, if you've never seen one. Nice, interesting flowering tree. Just trying to find the right shot for you. This will do. This will be our last one unless someone's got a question. It's been a triple trunk tree. Who would agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
What does it suggest for you? Maybe the tree's been injured before to get 3 stems. That far, and that far. It's probably not that 3 trees have been planted. So this is all regrowth. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
If we look at the distance between there and there, I haven't got a measure on it, but I'm guessing that's probably 15 centimeters, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches. For 3 stems, that's either 1, 2, 3 trees have been planted, or 1 tree has been planted, cut down, and then 3 stems have regrown around what was once a stem about here. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is included, and in time, each of these little spots here will form an included area. And I'm pretty sure I've got some shots of wine barreling. If I can spell correctly. Yep. This is a wine barreling failure here. So this is a Melaleucas typhloides. That was once joined to there. That was once joined to there. That was once joined to there. It's been slowly pushing itself out. It wasn't cut down necessarily because it had been doing that, but you can see again, pushed apart, pushed apart, pushed apart. These little bits here we call a sinus. So this is a buttress and a sinus, or a lobe if you're talking about a leaf, and a sinus if you're talking about a leaf. Okay, so these little sinuses are notorious for this issue. You can see the same thing. This is a eucalyptus. It's not necessarily a problem. It's just something to look at. They can fail, but I'm amazed at how seldom they do fail. If you head to Western Australia, to the agonis in Western Australia, you'll find that really commonplace for agonis to do this. Melaleuca, we talked about it earlier on, microcories. Microcories almost all have these sinuses that create issues. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, if you did a tomograph test on this, you would get a nightmare. Why?
Voids everywhere.
Yeah, voids everywhere. How the hell does a nail here transport to a nail here? It can't. So, yeah, we've got to be able to read this language. And this is a problem when we use tomographs on things like ficus with big buttresses. Even if this wood is still connected, so let's go back to where there was a connection still. You know, even if that was still connected, it hadn't popped apart. You know, woundwooded. So this is woundwood that's joined this together. That was isolated out. So even if that was joined together, it's still got to come in, around, and back out. And so when you're testing on a ficus, that's going to create a problem. So the alternative is you test in here. That creates a problem, and that you've ignored all the strength of the buttress. So things with big buttresses and sinuses are really hard to get a real gut feel on just based on tomography or resistance drilling. Hard one to calculate. But let me give you an alternative. So you see something like this and you think, oh, this is horrible. Who here has heard of a strangler fig? Anybody? Strangler figs that grow around, and you know, Ficus watsoniana, Ficus macrophylla. Most of our figs will start in Australia, start their life as a strangler fig. And if we have a look at one, over time, what they do is they constrict the growth of the tree underneath. So here's a good one. And the inside of the tree dies, the tree that can't expand. The cambium is killed off. We get ring barking, the trunk dies, and then it hollows out over time. Is everyone comfortable with that process?
Yep.
Then we should cut this down. Yeah. Look how hollow that is. Boy, that's unacceptable. And Peter's been with me. I don't think Derek, no, Derek hasn't. Peter's been with me to see I think you did. Yes, you did, Peter, the Bellingen figs.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Oh, what wonderful trees. 2 Ficus macrophyllas that are over 45 meters high. That's tall for a ficus. They started their life as stranglers in the upper canopy of a tree, and they just make us look tiny. At some stage or other, they would have had a structure that looked very much like that. That is mostly hollow. Let's see if I can find it. Hollow. You know, this sort of situation here, if I put TR on that, it would fail. If I put a tomograph on it, it would fail. If I put a resistograph, it would fail. And yet they don't fail. And it's just so consistent. So I'm not saying that every tree is the same, but it's something to keep in mind that we often underestimate the capacity of a tree to hold itself up. And there's a reason for that.
And those figs will usually have aerial roots coming down as well, won't they?
Yeah, they'll eventually strangle themselves as well. But this process of growing up and around and having a large canopy, and as I said, in the case of the Bellingen figs, and I'll just see if I can find them. Peter, you'll have to help me on this. Bellingen is spelled B-E-L-I-N.
BELL.
B-double-L, thank you. It may or may not pick the figs up, but they're some of the biggest. We might get there. No, they are indeed. Oh yeah, they're there. That's them. Okay. So they don't look like they're much of a fig, but there's a person standing about 5 or 6 meters out from the trunk. They are just enormous trees.
Is that Peter when he was little?
What's the date on that? What's it give me as a location? Yeah, it says, because it says Bellingen, yep. Big wound on it again, just deals with it so well. So yes, there's a person there. That's the height of the person. From there to there. There's a person there. Can you see them? That's a person. So arm out to arm out. That's 1.5 meters there. Look at the width of that tree. Isn't it exquisite?
Beautiful.
It's on private property, but the owner is more than happy to let people have a look at it. Just two trees that are just exquisite. Would you agree, Peter? Definitely worth a detour.
Oh, yes, they're pretty amazing.
Yeah. And you don't get a sense of the size until you actually get amongst them and you think, wow, I'm now tiny. But yes, at one stage, these were hollows from about here all the way down. They've got hollow trunks, but those buttresses, when we go back to our strangler figs, just doing an amazing job of giving support. I was going to say, part of the reason why is young trees that are growing in a forest, their primary goal is what? Young sapling.
Red light.
Get sunlight. Yeah. Don't worry if you're flexible enough that you can be pulled over to one side and touch the ground. And we've all done that to a young sapling. Don't worry about that. As long as you can stay basically upright, let's go as high as we can. Once we're in position, then we start to strengthen up. And so as trees get older, their wood starts to stiffen, their material properties change. We know this. You can actually do this when you're cutting down a tree. You can cut a piece of the center out, mill it up, make it, 5 mils thick, 10 mils wide, and try bending it. And you'll see how flexible the middle is. Get to the outside and try the same thing. You'll see how inflexible it is in comparison. So a tree can adjust its cellular structure. It's called ultracellular structure, the S1 to S3 layers. And if that doesn't make sense, let me say, I'm getting old. Get yourself into a tree anatomy course at some stage fairly soon, because I don't know that I've got the physical strength to keep on doing them. Definitely going to do them for another couple of years, but that might be the end of them. So yeah, get in there and have a play with us and figure out what that's about. But they can make and they change the chemical composition slightly, but more significantly, the angle of the microfibrils to make themselves that much stiffer and stronger. So, and that's part of the reason why, the TR ratio starts to fail fairly significantly on trees. They've got about an 85 centimeter diameter trunk. By then, trees are almost all becoming stiff and rigid. The flexibility concept is gone. I'm here for good now. So, and if you get a tree, and it's interesting, we've never done it. We've got time here. I'm going to hate myself for doing this hour. tree calc. Has anyone ever played with tree calc?
Yeah.
Yep.
Use now. I agree. Log in. Yes. Okay. And there's not a lot of eucalypts in it. It's European, but there are eucs in reference tree species. So we've got them here already. B, eucalyptus. Oh, microcories, we discussed that earlier. Okay, great. Tallow wood. We're going to get a tree that's, I don't know, 15 meters high. It's got one stem only, and it's 30 centimeters in diameter, and probably 18 meters at that end. And, you know, we don't necessarily need to worry about that. We do need to worry about its shape. So typical microcories, probably, I don't know, what do you reckon for a typical microcories? That's a reasonable shape for a young tree? Sorry?
I find they're a bit more dome shaped.
A bit more dome shape? Yeah. More like that?
Yeah, I think more like that.
Yep, okay. I'm happy with that pear shape. Crown width, what do you reckon, about 10 meters across?
Yeah,
And the distance above, well, they're usually probably about 18 meters, probably about 8 meters up by then. Something like that. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, something like.
Okay. And I'm just about to spend some money, and I'm pretty sure there's enough in the account to do it. But we're going to look at what happens if we look at terrain. Sorry, it's in the city. Yep, it's definitely in a city. Suburbs. Okay, suburbs for most of us. Calculate. Continue. Yes, you're going to charge me money. That's fine. Go ahead. And I've got a basic safety factor of 1.42. That means this tree is only just holding itself up. If it gets a loss, a little bit of a decay, so let's put some decay in it. We can do that. There we are. I've put a cavity of, what have I got there? 50%. So not anywhere near the TR ratio. And here I've gone down, it already says I've gone down to failure. So I've got to do some reduction pruning to stop it from failing because they're a thin trunk. Now, with that in mind, and let me print screen. I don't know where that's going to go. No, that's going to go, but that's okay. I'll do it a different way. I'll snip it. And so I'll save these, and Peter, you can, if someone asks, I can send it on and get it new. There we are. So that's our basic there. We've got a 1.4 file. Save as. Pictures and tree calc 1. Tree calc 1. We go back and play another one, and we can do that fairly easily. Remembering what we've just got then. Make my tree a little bit taller, 24 meters, 25.4 there we are. Stem diameter, let's go up to 72 centimeters. Yeah, 72, that's not that big for a microcories. No second stem. We've got crown now a little bit higher up, a little bit broader, and a little bit higher above ground. and everything else is the same. So we've just made our tree bigger essentially.
We've got its second stem there.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Glad someone. No, I haven't. Have I? Oh, yeah, I have. 0. Thanks. Now I think it's right. Calculate. Yep. I don't know. It's where hypothetical go out and find them, but you can see again, even with the hollow, our stem is a little bit better than what it was. It's actually still needs a small amount of reduction pruning for the hollow. So if you start playing around with this with real numbers, what you'll find is you'll get something like a ficus. And let me go back. Let me grab this one and then go back quickly. New snip.
Can you change the height of the hollow with that? Like if it was midway up the trunk?
Midway, no, you can't. Midway up the trunk's actually lower problem than towards the. No, sorry. Yeah, midway up is more problematic than towards the bottom. Yeah. Basal cavity is lower concern. Yeah. So that's what you can do, and I certainly have done it on a number of occasions with real figures, is looked at things like an oak tree and come out with figures that you just wouldn't believe. But I'll do that in a second. Pre-calc 2.jpg. So it saves. Go back. I'll do the last one, and I don't know that it's got ficus, but it'll certainly have quercus. No ficus, so I'm going to use quercus. And quercus is a great example. Typical English oak, big English oak. Have any of you got one in your end of the world? Wants to volunteer, give me the figures. For a starter, not likely to be 25 meters high. Would we agree with that?
Yeah, 25 meters.
For a quercus, 18. Stem diameter, 0. It's going to be more than 1 centimeter bark thickness, by the way, guys, but that's okay. Let's do 4 centimeters. The older a tree, the thicker the bark. Why does it want to keep on going to a second stem? Don't know why it's doing that. It is not happy with it. I don't know why it's going to a second stem by default. Let's just okay, let's go back. Menu. Log it up. Log in. Yes. Okay. Let's get it this time. Focus. So I'm thinking of one of the ones, Derek, down at Hamilton Cottage. We can do Quercus robo from here. Quercus robo. Height.
Yeah, that was 15, 16 meters. DBH from memory was I think it was 800 or something, just on 900.
900, okay, 90 centimeters. Great, thank you. 90 centimeters, yep. We've only got 1 stem now. Crown shaped, that's an umbrella.
Yeah, very much so.
Really broad. Not quite an umbrella in any of those shapes there. We're going to go the closest shape, which is that one there. Width, about 25.
Yeah, it was, yes. It was quite broad. Yeah, I think it was about as wide as it was high, 16, 18.
18, okay, thank you. I'll just come down a fraction. Yeah, that'll do. And branches fairly low, close to the ground.
Yeah.
Terrain, suburbs again, and calculate. Now, this is going to give you a very different safety ratio, and we're going to start doing some horrible things to this oak tree. And it's got a margin of 7 to 1. So it's twice as strong as the normal safety factor. What would happen if we have an opening like that? Well, the answer is we're still 6.9, don't need to worry about it. Let's have a significant opening. Let's really make it big. We've still got a 4 to 1 safety margin. Even with a thin wall, more than the TR ratio already gone. Here we are, 90% gone, and we've got no issues. Cavity, bigger cavity, really thin. We've still got almost 4 to 1. We're better than a microcories with full trunk.
Mm.
Let's make a bigger cavity. Come on. Well, we're getting close to failure. We're 1.8. We're still better than the microcories. We've got 20% opening and 20% of remaining tissue, 10% on each side. We're at failure point according to Manic's TR ratio. Half the tree gone. Yeah. Now we're going to have to do some reduction pruning. And at that, too much reduction pruning to keep it. And I've got an oak tree where we've got that equation, and the tree is still got enough trunk diameter. The height is low enough that it doesn't need reduction pruning, because the trunk is that broad, the tree is that squat and that wide. Half of it failed in a storm, and we showed that we could still lose all that trunk and still have it get there. And you can see we get to the half trunk weight. Let's get there. Yeah, at that, codominant stem failed, not a problem.
Yeah.
More than happy to keep codominant stem, and we're getting close to the TR ratio here, and I've still got margins. It's now because I've changed the direction of the prevailing winds. You can see I've now got it to the stage where it's ridiculous. So let me give you that one into the collection. I don't know. I think they're about $5 or $4 a time that you use tree calc, but it really does help people see. File, save as, see that just because 70% of the tissue is gone, particularly on bigger trees. Tree calc oak comparison doesn't necessarily mean we need to know more than just what the loss of material is like in terms of a ratio. Small squat tree, and if we change that shape, and we're not going to do it now, but if we change that shape here to our typical conifer shape, and brought it back to our typical araucaria shape, you're going to be sitting there wondering how araucarias ever fail. And they do, but it takes a hell of a lot. So that's something that you might like to use, guys. I think you got to buy them in batches of $50 or $20 or something stupid like that. I don't know. Just buy crap loads of it. Do they tell me what the fee is? I think back on the website they do. So I'll just see if I can find it for you. But it's relatively inexpensive. So 45 calcs, $3 a piece. Close enough. Okay, hopefully that's something to have a look at. So yeah, this tree could have probably 80% or 90% decay and it's not going to have an issue.